Good morning, everyone, and welcome to October. So, as I said in the past podcasts, October is going to be dedicated to looking at the best quality information that I'm able to find on trauma. All right. Why? Because among the other coexisting conditions and experiences that individuals who, whether they clutter, overly collect, or hoard to the point that it is a verifiable hoarding disorder, it's a continuum, right? And one of the coexisting conditions is trauma. Trauma takes many, many different forms. You don't have to be a survivor of war or child abuse that was deliberate or whatever. We're going to discover more clinically today. We're going to start to unravel, okay, what is trauma and how can it be less than the drama and the intensely, obviously damaging experiences, but it settles in our mind, in our brain, all right, without us knowing it. We don't know it. That the way we've integrated that is as a trauma. And we'll talk a little bit more later about how that then starts to frame the way we allow ourselves the options that would undo that mislabeling, misinterpretation, and it continues to promote limiting beliefs in us. And remember, we can only do with our hands, our mind, and the rest of us what our brain allows us to recognize is possible. And our heart, by how we process experiences, even ones that are happy, even ones that are not happy, and ones that are far off, no one would call happy. How do we process those? Do chunks of them remain with us like junk hanging there? All right. And because we've limited our beliefs about what is right, what should happen, what we're capable of doing, what we are entitled to do for and with ourselves, we just accept that as reality. All right. We just accept it as reality. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to help you, I hope, and at the same time, certainly I have enriched my understanding, identifying our understanding. What in our mind do we think trauma has to be for us to start using the information and research that is available that might, to a total extent, a minor extent, actually help us change our view of the world to one that is more in line with one that will actually work and support us. And so the point of view of understanding trauma, okay, and identifying how it affects us individually and uniquely. The same thing can happen to 10 people with 10 different results and outcomes. All right. It isn't about, okay, if this didn't happen to you, then it can't be integrated and interpreted and affect you silently like trauma. Okay. I also want you to understand, and we may run over a bit, if that's okay with everybody, I want you to identify the best resources, all right? And hopefully take a start at looking at in what way, if trauma might actually be a factor, if it exists in your life, all right? Or whether it exists in your life. I'm not trying to talk anybody into necessarily interpreting every negative event in your life as trauma. That's not what I'm trying to do here. What I'm trying to do is shine a light based on best source information for you to say, you know, that one part of that experience, I really haven't processed and let go of. And it does continue to affect limiting beliefs in me. It does continue to affect me in a way I don't want to carry that anymore. So that we can better understand and we can begin to do the work that frees each and every one of us from its side effects. All right. Because those side effects, as I just said, they promote limiting beliefs. I know that's an oft overused word, but anything that holds us back and diverts us from a positive path that is legitimately there and available to us with a little work, anything that diverts us from that is a limiting belief. And it is no more reality in the truth than any other option that we can make work for us. Okay, because if we operate under limiting beliefs, we are likely to accept that erroneous message that is still lurking based on junk that we are carrying with us. We continue to accept that junk and the effect it has on us as fact, and it isn't, and as reality, and it isn't, as being something about us and our lives. It isn't. All right. So whatever the side effects are for each of us currently in our life today, and I've got mine as well, let's start a search for awareness. We can't do what we can't see, and we can't deal with what we don't challenge ourselves to look at other ways possibly to process things that we have accepted, rules we give ourselves, limits we just know we can't do that. All right. So of course, in my search, all right, I look for the best source information, and I turn to a few leading experts, even though, and I just want to state, even though I have worked with individuals who hoard and for over 21 years, and those who clutter, wherever you are on the continuum. And of course, I have had a fair amount of experience working with individuals who hoard. That doesn't make me an expert, certainly not to the extent that I want to bring the quality information to you. And so we're going to heavily lean on, all right, the work of people who are widely accepted as experts. And so one of my absolute favorites, I have to admit, I have a bit of a crush on him, is, this is just one of his books, Gabor Mate. I just think he is the bee's knees, frankly. And he's an MD, and he gets lots of criticism, but he's sound. He's sound, he's compassionate, he's respectful, and he's knowledgeable. All right. And when the body says no, the cost of hidden stress is one of the books that I rely on. This is a go-to book for everybody here today. All right. If you're going to invest in one thing, this is the one I want you to invest in. There is a more complicated book, also a great source, but it is so difficult to wade through. And that's by Bessel. All right, The Body Keeps the Score. You are something that I am not, positively, if you can wade through that book. All right. Gabor has translated it into digestible chunks of solid information. So I heavily, a little like Procrastination, Jane Berka's book, this is another Bible for me. So I heavily encourage you. If there are any parts of your past that remain with you or revisit you or you feel limit you, that is a book to go to. The other one we're going to start with today as well, because there's more than one, is this book. And the reason I love this book is because I think one of the most destructive things we do to ourselves, really, and it is never reality based, is to say to ourselves, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? There's not a darn thing wrong with you. All right. There's not a darn, if you aren't deliberately hurting somebody else just for the sheer pleasure of it, and you aren't hurting yourself just for the sheer pleasure of it, knowing it, all right, there's not a darn thing wrong with you. What there are things that are true, I believe, is we need to figure out where that message is that we're using. Okay, where did we get that? And never go back to that source. And make it work in a responsible, healthy way, whatever that belief is about. Okay, however it affects your life, rejig it to be responsible, to be healthy, and to be effective. And so Bruce D. Perry, he's an MD with a PhD, like an MD isn't enough or a PhD isn't enough, and Oprah Winfrey collaborated on this book, and I just love it. And the question it starts with is not what's wrong with you, all right? It's what happened to you. And nobody here today hasn't had events that have happened to them. All right. I think it's just such a compassionate, and it's not just fancy words. Isn't that cute? It's just a catchy phrase. It isn't. It speaks to how you approach yourself with acceptance, even if you're 100% in the wrong, even if you are 100% off course in life, that you approach yourself with respect and acceptance and love and compassion. All right. None of us here today, myself included, is 100% anything. Got it? Every day is a new start. So I do want to start, though, just so that and it's conversations on trauma, resilience, and healing. Okay, so I knew I was going to love the book when I realized, as I'm starting to wade through it with a deadline to bring some of it to you folks, that I really loved reading the research. That is not a normal experience for me. And thoughts about trauma. All right. And I thought, oh, this is going to be so heavy. I have to really be sure that I don't depress people and whatever. It was an easy read, solid information. All right. And because he can't be here today, we are heavily going to lean on his book. All right. He starts out, and he is not the first source. I remember taking a continuing ed course at Harvard. I normally, when COVID's gone, I'll be back to it. Every summer, I would take a summer course at Harvard on some topic I really wanted to know about, and I wanted to know about attachment, all right? Because I believe attachment issues are a fundamental bedrock of clutter and hoarding. All right. Is it the whole story? No, it's not. But I do not subscribe, like many other experts, that it's just an anxiety. It's the anxiety, the depression, those comorbidities. People, they're coming from somewhere. You weren't born with them. All right. The ones that are not neurologically based, you weren't born with them. They came from somewhere. All right. So in this other course, it's a whole other 2 hours, but I guess the fundamental message from that was, when as an infant, you cried out for whatever it was you felt you needed, you wanted, all right? That stage of development in our brain, nobody disagrees with this. All right. When an infant cries out for something, it is like their life depends on it. Their security, their existence depends on it. And it doesn't matter whether it's a bottle or a dry diaper or food or being held. It is incorporated in their little souls, in our little souls. Like, somebody's got to come. Somebody's got to come. And if somebody comes, if a reliable, relatively consistent person, it's not perfect, it's not every time a baby cries, but if someone comes, something is changed in the brain. All right. If no one comes, or worse yet, someone comes inconsistently. Sometimes when I'm hungry, somebody comes, but I can't count on it. If a child, and this is pre-verbal development of the brain, the child is not saying this to themselves. They're not even aware that this is the way they're incorporating this message. All right. It'll be years before they can even realize they had a thought. This is the way their brain function. And next week, we're going to talk, I hope I don't bore everybody. We're going to talk about the development of the brain, and you'll see why this makes sense. All right. That the brain basically is an inverted pyramid. All right, with reptilian at the bottom and cortex at the top. And there's a lot of steps and functions that happen in between. We're talking reptilian brain function in an infant, all right? Even pre-verbally, we have started to formulate the messages and clearing the synapses in the brain about how our world from the very beginning welcomed us and provided the reassurance and security we needed. Okay, because reassurance, reliability, consistency, and security are two needs that are fundamental pieces in our primal pre-verbal brain, all right, in that primal search for balance. So anybody here right now feel that you're 100% balanced? 50% balanced? On a good day, 30% balanced? You can count on it? Okay. Does your balance go up and down depending on how you're feeling? Yeah. This information is for each and every one of us, all right? Because reassurance and acceptance, which reassurance is acceptance, all right? And security, that you can count on it, okay? It isn't a random shot in the dark. You're going to get fed or changed or held when you're afraid or lonely, okay? And it can be, it often is, those two things, the lack of it, the building blocks to how we develop and approach our life moving forward, okay, from infancy to childhood and then adulthood. It starts young. So I'm going to read you a note from the authors of what happened to you, just so that you can understand, all right? And they say, both Perry and Oprah Winfrey say, what happened to you? This book is dedicated, the reason they wrote it, to anyone with a mother, a father, a partner, or a child who may have experienced some form of trauma, all right, whatever form it took. And here were some key words that I wanted to include. And if you've ever had labels like people pleaser, self-sabotage, disruptive, argumentative, checked out, can't hold a job, to describe you or your loved ones, this book is for you. All right. If you simply want to better understand yourself and others, this book is for you too. And they know that reading this book will make you think and possibly make you feel deeply at times. They just want to give you a heads up. And the feelings may be really hard and painful. They started to evoke something in me, and I'm still processing it. All right. So if they do the same to you, you know what? Hang on. Even if it's a bumpy ride, we're going to come out this the other end together. All right. Nobody will get left behind. For some, the intense and sometimes disturbing content will be a challenge. For others, the concepts about the brain may be unfamiliar and initially difficult to understand. They ask for your patience and your trust with them, that the hard and the painful, the intense, sometimes disturbing content, even though it will be a challenge. For others, the concepts about the brain, okay, it gets a little technical in one part of one chapter, may be unfamiliar and initially difficult to understand, but they're really important. They ask for your patience and your trust and to hang in, all right? When you find the book too challenging, you get into the technical stuff. It's never as technical as the other book I told you about. But you do have to kind of stop and go, and go back to the diagram. You get it though, all right? When you find reading it too challenging for whatever reason, stop. All right? If you need an hour, if you need a day, if you need a week, if you need 3, take it. The book will still be there, and then go back to it after you've digested, because it is a book. It's not a profound book that's going to overwhelm you, all right? But it is going to challenge you to think, and you may have to stop and chew and digest at some points, all right? And if you do, you do. The book will be there waiting for you, okay? So Oprah offered an experience from her life, and it isn't the sexual abuse experience, just as an intro, just to let you see. And so I wanted to focus on that today, because this, to some degree or other, is what each and every one of us have experienced, all right? And for Oprah, it was what it was like not to be not to be taken care of by her mother, her biological mother, or her father. Started out with her mother, but it just couldn't work. Her mother wasn't able to be available. So she went by default to her grandmother, all right? And the introduction is about what it was like to grow up in her very stern, children should be seen and not heard, punishing, but not, she wasn't a horrible person. She was a woman of her time who, through duty, took her daughter's child when she was already overwhelmed and overloaded with responsibilities. She didn't have anywhere near the resources to expect to be able to meet, and still she tried. All right. So Oprah wanted that to be part of the context as well. No judgment, just observe. but her grandmother was punishing, the home was punishing. And she knew at some level that she was loved by her grandmother, although perhaps not wanted. And even more so, not wanted there. All right. Why? Because she was an extra mouth to feed and extra work, and the grandmother already had more responsibilities than she could manage. Grandmother was over challenged, but she was stepping up to try to handle what others had created for her. All right. She was a woman of her time. So Oprah was a duty. She certainly wasn't a gift. All right. She also knew, as many of us, that the choices parents made for disciplining us, teaching us, and training us only ended up making us hypervigilant and afraid or avoidant. Physical retaliation, and this is my statement, physical retaliation on anyone is always wrong. When you destroy or you have your dignity and self-respect or that of others damaged, that's beyond correction. There's no justification, no matter what the times tell you. All right, that is beyond any definition of what can be perceived as right or okay. But like so many of us, the culture of child rearing and family life normalized options like spankings, beatings, even to the point of whippings, which is what Oprah received in order to correct her behavior or her attitude, blaming, shaming, rejection, manipulation to acquire compliance. Many of the things that were considered acceptable in correcting children to teach them a better way, the right and correct way to become respectable, successful adults. What were the discipline options in your family and later in your life? What were they? Take a second right now and write down the ones that come to mind. What were the discipline options in your family as a child, as a young adult, as a teenager, and then even in our adult relationships with our parents? What were the discipline, the options to obtain compliance or acquiescence? And as we learn, as we progress through the book, you may discover, I know I did, that remnants of the after effects might still be dwelling in the corners of your brain, but you may not see them or acknowledge them until you go looking for them. Don't talk yourself into anything, all right? We're not trying to say you have to find something, but if something there rests uneasily with you or it's unresolved, take it out into the light. Bruce and Oprah met and began their partnership in the early stages of Bruce's career. He saw the role of trauma. He was one of the first to see the role of trauma as a major factor in physical and mental health. He and many others have discovered the validity of that moving forward. Okay. He's a neuroscientist. His PhD was in neuroscience, especially around the development of the human brain. And at the point he was starting, that was largely unexplored and certainly a misunderstood. I'm going to give you a really good example of misunderstood even by MDs, all right? Even by MDs. And as it turns out, this is my opinion, all right? But as it turns out, the famous Dr. Spock has a lot to answer for in the decades of advice he gave new, young, trusting, inexperienced, hopeful, trusting, overwhelmed parents of newborns. that little entity, okay, that they've been gifted with, that they have so much hope and investment for, and what to do, what they had to do, what was best to do to make them strong, dependable, respectable members of society as adults. So I want you to have that image, and then I want us to go back to 1991 when Bruce Perry headed up a team. This is where it started. It was called the Sanctuary Model. It was set up as an inpatient unit, and the goal of the inpatient unit was to try to describe the change that happens to each and every one of us in recognizing and responding to issues of trauma, which now that actually happens is a widely accepted causal issue. I'm going to repeat that. What happens to us in recognizing and responding to issues of trauma is now accepted widely as the cause, a causal issue for the problems most people have with anxiety. Are you with me? Do you know how many people in this world are living with anxiety? Do you think there's any part or any merit in seeing if you can peel the lid off this for yourself and see if this is a factor? All right, for you to have an opportunity to unload the limiting beliefs that you might still be carrying. So in chapter 1 of the book titled Making Sense of the World, this is what happened to you. Chapter 1 is Making Sense of the World. Bruce and Oprah explore whether or not feeling loved and secure in the experience from the perspective of the infant. How do you gauge that? You gauge it by looking at brain function, all right? And this is true for every newborn, all right? And that was you and me, people. No, nobody escaped that phase, all right? We share one profoundly important trait, each and every one of us, and that trait is that despite the very different circumstances that each and every one of us were born into, we all come into the world with an innate sense of wholeness. We are a whole, complete, perfect little entity. All right? Let's just stop for a second there and appreciate that. We come into this world mentally, physically, as much as emotionally can be developed in a newborn infant. I'm not an expert on that. We come into it complete and whole. We're not aware. We are not aware that there's anything wrong, that there's anything missing, or that there's any little negative. We're not aware. That is not in our perception. It's not one spark in our brain. We do become aware, however, of our needs. We don't know their needs, but we express them, all right? So each and every one of us, and there's no way around it, you're not different, all right? Came into this world whole and good enough, all right? And from our very first breath, we begin to try to make sense of our surroundings. And we begin trying to figure out and secure those needs, those things, whatever they are, that are most important to us. Because we're whole and complete, our little brains can sense innately. All right. Who and what will nurture and care for us? That's why every time we cry, every time we do whatever we do as newborns, all right, however we express that, we are searching for nurture and care because we know innately that is the basis of our survival. It isn't just crying, let the baby cry, they'll fall asleep. The child, the infant, is experiencing that as a threat to life, a threat to its existence. And as they develop, as enough of those needs are met, that's why you see in some of those horrible newsreels of large-scale adoption, large-scale nurseries where children, for whatever reason, have been abandoned, and the numbers are beyond. You see the eyes have gone dead, but a few are still trying to rise to get their needs met. All right. So who and what will nurture and care for us? And who comforts us? And for so many of us, all right, that's where life begins to take its toll. Let the baby cry. Telling parents that you'll spoil the child. You'll turn that child into a spoiled, demanding person, unable to self-soothe like a child, like an infant can self-soothe. Give me a break. Responding to your child's calls for comfort in whatever form they take. If you respond at their request, you'll create a problem. What utter balderdash. The child doesn't know enough to be manipulative, to be demanding, to be anything other than completely authentic in what they're expressing a need for. Are you still doing that as an adult? Are you still doing that? What is your internal response when you hear me say, what do you need? Where is it? And how do you get enough of it to make enough of a difference? That is all this infant is saying. I may have put it into words, but that is all we were ever expressing. In fact, according to an infant's brain, okay, you're teaching them that life, if nobody comes consistently, they can't count on it. What we're actually teaching those infants, and they don't even realize, they're pre-verbal, they don't even realize how to express that. We're teaching them that life is insecure, that they're not important enough to warrant the care they require. They're expressing that they need it. They require it. That is what their experience is. It's legitimate. And that they're not entitled to even their most basic needs being met, not reliably. It'll depend on the randomness of the availability of the person, and that they can't count on being taken care of. The world won't take care of them, because you are their world. This person, this entity who comes, or the people who come, that is their world. And they get to recognize the face. There they are, there they are. Have you ever seen a child's face light up, particularly when the consistent caregiver approaches them? All right, that's why. They don't like that person better. They don't know how to like and not like. That's not part of it. There they are. There they are. All right. When that didn't happen for some of us, it's not that it didn't happen at all, or we wouldn't be here, but it didn't happen reliably. It didn't happen consistently. It was kind of like a random. All right. there was a lesson we were starting to learn, and that was you can't count on people to take care of you. All right. All right. And the world, by extension, the world won't take care of you. And by association there, when you narrow your world down to the relationships that we are, each and every one of us are in, our chosen relationships won't take care of us either. Okay. And what's more, we have extended that over layers of our life to the point that, are we saying at this point, is anybody here saying it's not even reasonable to expect them to, the relationships in our life? Does anybody wonder right now why asking the question, what do I need? Where is it? And how do I get enough of it to make enough of a difference was actually a light bulb moment for many of you? You told me it was. I have clients who have come full circle, well, half circle, saying there's no point in me asking what I need. I'm never going to get it. Okay, so whether your parents had the skills and the best of intentions, the prevailing expert baby advice turned out to be really bad advice, with equally bad tips on how to correct the child's behavior. Really, you're going to teach a baby something. The prevailing advice was do not respond. Do not allow the child to cry themselves to sleep. They will learn to self-soothe. All right, an infant. We're talking infants. We're not talking toddlers here. All right, we're not talking toddlers. We're talking infants. Whether they were wet or soiled, you couldn't know whether they were wet or soiled. I remember having that confusing, like, okay, I'm not supposed to go in. And unfortunately, our first child was a very social first child. If anyone in the apartment building was there, he just knew it and he wanted to be out there with them. Okay. Okay. So I was like, could he be wet? Could he be soiled? Could he have his foot stuck in the, okay. You don't know. Why? Because you weren't supposed to go to them. Oh, you went in that door. Somehow the baby won. Hello. I'm going back thinking now, oh, gosh, why didn't I just do what I felt? Because I was a young parent and I didn't have the confidence. And I really, really wanted this kid to be a world changer. I wanted him to turn out really, really well. Okay. They were fed according to the clock. They were, and when all the while, okay, that's the thing that bothers me now. When all the while the better truth was, we just didn't know it. When the little guy had hunger pangs in his tummy, he knew that. I didn't know that. The clock for sure didn't know that. When he was lonely, okay, because he heard somebody's apartment door open and he knew there was somebody else there. He just innately knew it. All right. Or uncomfortable. All right. Or he just wanted to be held. But it was the end of the day and he was supposed to be in bed. Expressions of our fundamental needs became, for many, the reverse of what we were meant to learn. Is that true for you? And so when you are distressed, when you were distressed, did anybody come? Did they come reliably? Did they listen to you? All right. Do they listen to you today? Have you stopped believing that they have any responsibility or that it can ever happen? Will someone come to help? Will someone be available? Do your needs matter? Because we matter. Each and every one of us matters. So I'm going to look at the chat box. I know, Nora. Gabor Mate, I know. So Nora has, I guess, come to the same opinion of Gabor Mate as I do. He's fantastic. Claudia, to everyone, I felt triggered trying to read through Body Keeps the Score. Yeah, you might do better. Start with, Claudia, start with what happened to you. It's a gentle first entry, all right? Because it speaks about how your brain works, all right? And it isn't your brain, it's every newborn's brain, okay, from the first breath. And you can see when you get that from that perspective, you can see that in no way is it a failure of yours. That your heart works the way a heart works, that your brain works the way a brain works, that your hands work the way your hands work. That has got nothing to do with anything you can be judged positively or negatively for. That's a really good start. And then, yes, start this. This is a different approach to the same information. And when it's triggering, when it finds something, put the book down and chew on it, okay? Read to the end of that chapter because you want to complete the thought, and then chew on it. Let it be. Don't try to hide from it. Because you get triggered doesn't mean you're in jeopardy. Wherever you are, it's a very, very basic principle. You get triggered, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, stop. Stop and just feel where you are. If you're outside, feel the wind in your face. All right. Feel the temperature. If you're sitting somewhere, feel your bottom in the chair. Feel, if you can, take your shoes off. All right. Feel your feet on the ground. Whatever that trigger is, this is an opportunity to shine a light on it. All right. And see it for what it really is, so it can't hide there, exacting a little price, derailing you, making you afraid to go there, because that might be a place in yourself that you need to go to in order to cross the bridge. All right, but chew on it, just let it be. If you're being triggered, you are not in the event that is triggering you. All right, go to fact, never go to fear. Ride it out, get the help you need. If you find you're getting stuck, get the help you need to cross the bridge, because what you're looking for is on the other side. Don't back away from the trigger. All right. Okay. Yes, for sure I can. Hold on. In my next life, I'm going to come back as a much more technical person. All right, here. Eli, yeah, the title of the book and the author's name. Yes, I will. This is the title of the first book I want you to read, because I want you to come at it from what is a clinical but not technical. No blame, no possibility of blame or taking responsibility and feeling inadequate. This book. Then I want you to start this one. And this is by Dr. Gabor Mate, Gabormate, accent aigu, MD. Hafsa, can you put those in the, I think Hafsa already did it. Look down at the message at 11:17, What Happened to You by Bruce Perry and Oprah. And then when the body says no, Gabor Mate. Good. All right. Is that the title of the main book she's using? Christina, I'm using 2 books right now, and hold on to your hats. The whole month is trauma, okay? Because we're going to be starting to look at this book, but we're going to get to it. And it is Adverse Childhood Experiences. This is a population level study about what the normalcy of childhood experiences are. All right. And then we're going to, because that may be a point at which you go, whoa, this wasn't me. This was happening to half the Western world and some of the Eastern. Who knows how many people? This is not about me. All right. And it's not necessarily, I don't know this in your case, it's not necessarily about parents who were bad parents. There was a lot of crappy advice out there. And remember, they may, I don't know, I can't speak for you, but they may have had like the best of intentions. All right. I know, for instance, my mother, smart as a whip, had a grade 6 education because they were poor. And that's where girls stopped going to school. And when you got to grade 6, you were probably, I don't know, 13, 14. All right. That's when people went to work. And she never told me that she had a grade 6 education. All right. And she is the person who told me, and I remember it. It's not the only thing she told me. She told me lots of things that weren't that great that I needed to correct. But she told me, you can do anything, Elaine. You've proven that you can do anything you set your mind to. Be careful what you set your mind to. It was my father who told me she had a grade 6 education. I guess she was still ashamed of it. Maybe if she thought that if she told me that the bar, I would set my sights lower. So whatever happened to us is not necessarily the fault of anybody. It may have been an inadequate, misguided through no fault of their own limitation for what they had to offer as parents. And remember too, that for most of us here, all right, having children wasn't a choice. All right. I remember that in 1969 in Canada, 1970, I guess, in Canada, that was when birth control became legal. It's not that you couldn't get it, I guess, before then, but it was sort of like buying marijuana before it was whatever. It was at the discretion of somebody else who probably was doing something that they shouldn't have been doing. Talk about patriarchal, talk about misogynistic, right? So the world was a different place. The rules were different. The things that were available to overtaxed parents, it doesn't excuse it, but it does to some degree explain that there may have been no malice. And maybe parents who harmed us as children, maybe they never should have been parents. Maybe they would have made a different choice. Maybe we would have had to wait a little longer to get on the wheel of life and get a bit of spin. I believe we were all there. We still would have existed because we were meant to exist. We have a meaning. We have something that we uniquely need to add to this world before we leave. We do. Make sure we do it. Right? So we just would have been in this lineup. There would have been fewer people having babies, but it might have taken us a longer time in the queue to get put in the little slot and spin that wheel. Okay, that's what I believe. So you're here not as an accident of fate. You were meant to be here. I was meant to be here. All right. It's our entitlement to be here. It's our right. But I do think we need to have a responsibility and a meaning as well, so that when we leave this world, whatever our strengths are, whatever our skills are, we allow those things the space they need to be solid and to enhance our life and the life of anybody who we can help along the way. So that today is a better day, the world is a better place for having had us in it. Okay, so let's go back. We'll finish the questions in the chat box, and then we will see you next week. Okay, let me see. Yeah, that is the title of the book. Can you be primed for trauma in utero? I don't think you're ever primed. I do not believe that the I can't even get my head around that our biological system would set us up for trauma. No, I don't believe that. I believe that at the point we enter this world, I think that's where the clock starts ticking on, did we get our needs, enough of the primal needs we have, not every little thing we wanted, but the primal needs, were the messages what they needed to be? And I think that there are a lot of odds stacked against parents through the periods that many of us entered this world with. All right. I think parents, I know even, as a parent in 1969, I know that, yes, we wanted Matthew, and we had no idea what to do with him. We had no idea. And I don't think you ever get the baby that, you think, okay, if the baby does this, I'm all set. Okay, I know. Okay, and I read all the books and okay, I got that. But you never get that kid. Okay, you get a different kid. And that kid, I think, is sent to teach you something, to make you grow, to make you, okay, and the kid pays the price, because in the meantime, you're faking it. All right. You're doing your best, but many, many times in many, many ways, you're thinking, Lord, help me. I have no idea what to do here. Like, I have no idea. No idea. Okay. And if I went to my parents, I might get advice that was outdated, or I might get great kind of natural advice. The baby's crying, pick them up. Yeah, that's, I think it's what our world, our culture, the powers that be have a vested interest. There's a reason why birth control, all right, was illegal until 1970, I guess it was. There's a reason for that. All right. And it isn't pro-woman. It isn't pro-man either. Think of all those other babies that were born where lives got taken over. Who knows? And it matters not to blame someone else, which is not the same thing as holding them responsible for what they did. Holding someone responsible for what they did or didn't do, I think, is legitimate, but not with hate in your heart. Just with, you know what, this was a really noxious experience for me, and you didn't handle it well enough to help me with what I need. The next question then is, what do I need to do for myself now, today? That I don't use that as an excuse to carry the junk that I am now aware of. What do I need to do? And I know in this material, it affects all of us. It affected me. And I know I found one or two things and I thought, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that anymore. Every time that thought comes to my mind, nope, that is not. Didn't realize what it was attached to. I understand now. And it is not part of tomorrow. Okay. Because if it continues to be part of tomorrow and limit me, guess what? That's on me. I've got no one to blame but myself. Now, what do I need to help myself deal with that? Because I may not have the skills and the ability. All right. I may need more information. Okay. But now I have a job. I have a job to divest myself of that junk. All right. We are walking this path together. Just because I'm a social worker, just because I'm the host of this podcast, doesn't mean that I don't have things that I want to look at when I trip over them. Okay. Everybody take care, and I will see you next Wednesday. Bye, everybody.
Can you do it? Yes, you can.